My students tell me that it's the best class they've ever taken. Not because I'm this wonderful professor, but because it's for the first time I'm really challenging them to go beyond their comfort zone and to really get into the field. And that kind of experience is invaluable. And I will tell you that our local partners the local universities, in many cases, have taken this model and continue to offer it every year locally. So we have a partner in the Dominican Republic that after the first year, I'm not involved, but every year, every summer, they go out and offer this class for their own students without any kind of international involvement at an undergraduate level, and the clients are always very pleased. It's very doable. Next, I want to talk a little bit about industry engagement in the classroom. At George Washington University, we actually focus on bringing experts into the classroom for business training. And we do a lot of short seminars where we may bring a hotel owner or a restaurant owner in, and they'll do a class very specific on things like what to dress to go to an interview, how to speak business talk, how to engage with the client, things that we might necessarily not cover, but they can speak as professionals on a regular basis. We don't ask the students to pay for these classes, but we do require that they take these classes. They're not for credit, but they're required in order to graduate at the undergraduate level. Most successful programs that have good relationships with industry do so through a point person, someone within the industry that is, someone within the school that's actually charged with making those connections to industry. That is challenging for us because most of us as faculty are very busy. So we don't necessarily have the time to outreach to hotels and restaurants and tour operators. And so having someone whose job it is to do that is vitally important. We also have, many universities have industry webinars, and the value of a webinar is once you record it, you've got it, so you can continue to offer it. And then an interesting thing that many schools, including George Washington, do is integrate certificate programs into their graduate program. We have a wonderful partnership with J4, where we offer our event management program, but we actually take our event management courses, which are not taught by academics, they're taught by industry experts, and we allow our masters and our undergraduate students to take those classes as part of their master's degree, and that's a lot of exposure to industry. We call it classes where the rubber hits the road, or where you're actually doing those things you'll need to be doing. Next, I want to talk to you about a case in Queensland, University of Queensland in Australia. They have a very successful program. They call it Work Integrated Learning. They have an internship program, just like many of us. But what they do is they actually take the top 20% of their students, so not the rejects, or not the people that just came into tourism because they didn't want to study anything else. But these are people, these are your most motivated students, and they pair them with executives in the hospitality and tourism industry. So students will spend 2 to 3 weeks, usually a half day each day, following an executive, a general manager, or another executive around, and really learning from their process, watching them. What this does is it allows the student experience, which of course is wonderful. It also allows the employer to possibly think about hiring that student after they graduate. It gives them experience and knowledge about the student. But it also provides an alliance at the very highest strategic level in these organizations between the academic institution and the private sector. And we've found that to be critical. If you're not talking at the manager level with partnerships, you're not really going to have long-lasting, sustainable partnerships. Another example that is really innovative is something that folks at Johnson & Wales University in the United States do. They have what's called an embedded internship. It's an internship program, but it's very different. The challenge with internships is that our partners in industry are very busy. They don't have a lot of time to spend on the intern, as you know. So what Johnson & Wales does is they take a senior level student, so a 4th year student, they put them at that institution. And that student serves as the mentor to younger students. What that student does is that student works at the institution So it might work at the tour operator or tour guide or museum. But their sole job is to mentor these students, these younger students, and make sure that there's academic rigor in the internship program, but also that they are making the right connections between the partnership between industry and academia without putting a lot of extra work on the private sector partner, because we all know that in the private sector we're very busy and don't have a lot of time, and often interns are not given the most exciting experience. Next I want to talk about, that's student engagement. I want to talk about faculty development. What can faculty do? And I just have a minute or two more. Faculty engagement is critically important, and there's some wonderful examples. I'm not going to talk too much because I know my colleagues after me are going to talk about internship programs for faculty. The Marriott and the Hyatt Corporation both have really interesting internships where faculty, those of us that are professors, actually do internships with the hotels. I will talk to you a little bit about the United Nations World Tourism Organization Knowledge Network. This is a fabulous organization. It's different from TEDQual. Anyone can join, and I'll discuss that in a minute. And then another way of engaging faculty and industry is through research collaboration. We've had wonderful experiences at George Washington University where our industry partners have shared with us data, which we can then turn into academic research, but also work with them to turn into applied research. And it's a fabulous opportunity to work together. The Knowledge Network at the United Nations World Tourism Organization was designed to really be the bridge between theory and practice. And I would encourage those that are academics in the audience to really look into the Knowledge Network. Anyone can join, and the focus is to bring those of us that work in tourism education and the private sector together in a united network. So all I can say, there are a lot of examples, and we're going to hear many more examples throughout the day. But what I would challenge you to do is think about throughout the day, and then as we go forward and design these, how we're going to put this into action, think about industry and academic relationships and collaboration. We know, we've heard the challenges for industry. You've heard some of the challenges for academics. I know that the tendency is to think that this is all very difficult and can't be done. It does require resources. Good collaboration requires structure and some time. But the end result is successful students, more engaged faculty, and an industry that feels that those of us that are teaching are responding to their needs. I think human nature, as a human, we tend to challenge the ability to make changes like this, and there will always be, we can't do this in Jordan because one reason or another. But I can tell you from experience that we've done these type of examples throughout the world, and it is very doable. It does take extra work and time, but inshallah, it can be done, and the situation and the partnership between the industry and the academic sector can continue to grow. Thank you very much.
Could we have more light in the back so that you can have a few questions? I have been instructed by the organizer that the time allowed for questions will be less than I suggested before, so we'll have a few questions. Anybody who wants to ask a question? Yes, please, there.
Thank you everybody for inviting us here. My name is Ismail Mahmoud. I'm assistant professor at Hashemite University. We run the Institution for Tourism and Heritage. At the beginning, Mr. Kawar mentioned that the graduates, they are poor in some skills, English and other maybe communication skills. Mr. Labash keep talking about we need, and the universities maybe have a number of graduates, they don't need the requirement of the private sector. So it's like supply and demand thing. Since my degree in tourism economics, I understand that the graduates should meet the needs of private sector. So there's a gap here between private sector and universities or the education system. So the question here, what both of us, academia and private sector, how can they work together and maybe narrow this gap? I think I just joined the academia maybe just since 3 months ago, and I believe more in practical, to be honest, more than maybe, I like theory, but the practical part is the most important, because tourism is maybe the most changeable industry in the world, maybe, because it's deal with behavior, people. So where we can maybe, what can private sector do to improve or shorten this gap? Here's the question.
Thank you for the question. As stated in my presentation, to bridge that gap that exists between the academic world was to integrate the internship throughout the 4 years. Meaning, in practical terms, you take semester 1, academia, semester 2, 3 or 4 months you spend in the workplace. You get hours accredited to your degree, and so forth. Semester 3, academia, semester 4, again, internship, and so forth. Because I believe that waiting 3 years and having the training at the very end of the degree makes it more difficult, because the things you learn in the workplace can be put in place in the studies. So this helps a lot to graduate students with professional skills that can go and produce immediately rather than wait to start from scratch again in the agency or wherever. And this makes it more efficient. That's one point. Mentioning the tourism changes. The tourism, yes, I agree with you, there are trends in tourism. Now, currently in Jordan, I believe there is about 20 types of tourism. We started in the 60s with the religious tourism to Jordan when we had the West Bank, Jerusalem, and other religious places. And then after the occupation in 1967, the trend changes to cultural tourism, to visit Petra and so forth. And then recently, for the past 10 years, event management has emerged as one of the high producers in the industry, because I believe the incentive client is a client that has at least 40% more spending power in the country, and this puts economic benefits to this niche tourism. I hope I managed to reply to at least part of your query. Thank you.
Excuse me, allow me to speak in Arabic. Okay. المشكلة عندنا في مناهج والبرامج التعليمية وخاصة في مؤسسات التعليم العالي غياب الشراكة الحقيقية والفعالة مع القطاع الخاص، وغياب آخر وحدات رسمية في نظام المؤسسة التعليمية لتعزيز العلاقة مع القطاع الخاص. يعني بتصير مرات هاي الوحدات عبارة عن بروجكت أو مشروع مدعوم من بعض المؤسسات المانحة ثم تختفي. يجب أن يكون في نظام المؤسسات التعليمية علاقة دائمة ومستديمة مع القطاع الخاص على مختلف المستويات. المستوى الأول بمجالس الأمناء، المستوى الثاني في مجالس اعتماد الخطط الدراسية، مؤسسة هيئة تعليم الاعتماد، برامج التعليم العالي ومؤسسات التعليم العالي يجب أن يكون في لجانها الفنية وبلجانها العامة اللي بتعتمد البرامج والخطط الدراسية شراكة أعداد كبيرة من القطاع الخاص، وتكون لهم دور أكبر في تطوير معايير اعتماد مؤسساتنا وخططنا الدراسية وبرامجنا التعليمية. شكرا.
Thank you. Professor Lamaro, would you like to comment? But you didn't understand the question, yeah?
So my understanding is just with regard to establishing partnerships.
Right. And
The question was how to do that.
how to do that, and she's suggesting that we introduce elements of the private sector in the board of trustee of the universities and something like that.
Yeah, I think that I'll respond in English because I don't know Arabic. I think that that's a very good example. I think that you have to think about the private sector on many different levels. At the entry level, you have to find opportunities for students to work in the industry. But at the higher levels, you have to find opportunities for the management to come into the classroom to teach, not in a regular class, but in seminars. And then, as you suggested, we find that having the private sector on board of two types of boards. What we do, and many schools do, is they have an advisory council, which isn't necessarily the board, but we can call on them, and they're all industry. And so I have 20 people on the advisory council from event management, sports management, destination management, and hotel management. And when our students need internships, when we need someone to teach, etc., we call on them. And because they are recognized as our partner in a very structured way, they respond. And I think the challenge with the internships and every one of the examples that has been given is that without a structure to support this, it will not work. Just sending students out to meet, to work at a hotel for a few weeks without the hotel being able to grade the student and give feedback will not work. And so the mechanism has to be, there has to be a way that the hotels can give feedback and the tour operators can give feedback, grading, to the university, not only in general, but also to those specific students. Because then those students won't know if they did a good job or not, if they don't hear from where they did the internship. So there's got to be a structure, there's got to be evaluation and interaction between faculty and the private sector. It can't just be calling on your cell phone. You know, we all have lots of numbers on our cell phone, but it has to be a bit more structured. And I recommend boards, and I strongly recommend a private sector advisory council.
Thank you. We may have a final question. Dr. Kwesi there.
Thank you. Dr. Saad Twesi, Dean of Petra Faculty for Archaeology and Tourism at Hussein bin Talal University. Actually, I have a comment, not a question. I totally agree with Mr. Kawar's recommendation 3, which is stated that we should focus more on training. Yes, we should, because in tourism fields and hospitality. Actually, the problem is once we design the program, we are very restricted to the criteria provided by the higher education accreditation criteria, which ultimately brings or makes the program a very theoretical program. Christine, thank you very much for this Chinese proverb, which means practice is the best way of knowledge, which is this actually motion we should put in mind once we are thinking of tourism education. Tourism education must be more focused more on practice rather than theoretical. Theoretical is very important, and we should give some theoretical courses, but also practice in tourism field and hospitality is the best way of knowledge and the best way of giving the student the skills they need in their careers. Thank you very much. So my recommendation is the criteria of private accreditation should be reconsidered again. Thank you.
I think it's very important that all of these relationships not just be held to one internship. Bringing private sector into every class, in any way possible, is very important, including having students do actual projects with organizations. If we leave it to an internship, even if it's every year, we're missing opportunities for our students.
Although Dr. Ziad is very watchful for time, but we may allow one final question, please, there.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Ahmed Shamoud from Al Applied University. I actually would like to thank Christine on her presentation because she addressed two different models, one from Washington University and the other one which is from Queensland University in Australia. The models, they are very important to be recognized here in Jordan. But I think in our case, I would really suggest Queensland University one, because it's based on the strategic partnership relationship management, which is very important. Here we don't really feel that there is any sort of relationship on that level if we need really to contribute or to bridge the gap between the industry and the institutional education. And the other one, design professional development course for students that can be done through design these courses according to the interest of the industries. That means the academic people need to be set together with the industries people, the executive managers, to contribute both to that course. And also we need to recognize the very talented students and to take into account consideration that these students, they are very important for hotels because this will reduce the cost of the industry in recruiting new people, who are unskilled people, I mean here. But the question now, is the industry really able to do that? I feel from my experience, me and industry in Jordan, feel from my experience that with the university there is no problem, it's open all the time. Because industry usually seeking cheap labor and the education institution seeking structural training experience. We need now to overcome this shortcoming really. I think maybe one of the industry people can answer these questions if they have really the ability to do so. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
I think, as Mr. Qawar has mentioned, that we need to focus on basically the practical training for the students. It's very important for us as the industry, as the tourism and hospitality industry, really to have skilled and knowledgeable students to work for the industry. There is always a growing need for employment at our sector. And of course, it would make our lives much easier if we have the employees with the basic skills and basic knowledge that are coming from the educational facilities. I think the main purpose of holding this conference is to minimize the gap and to build bridges between the educational facilities and the industry, and to identify the actual needs, and to move away a little bit from just teaching or giving our students the theoretical part.